Our next speaker, please. Our speaker is Wayne Weible, a former newspaper publisher and columnist who became interested in the alleged apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary to 6 young Croatians in the tiny farming village of Medjugorje in Bosnia-Herzegovina. He's written 3 international bestseller books on his experiences and his investigations of the reported apparitions. Wayne Weible's first book was called Medjugorje, The Message, published in 1989. The second was titled Letters from Medjugorje, published in 1991, and the latest publication, Medjugorje, The Mission, with an official release date of April 1995. In October of 1985, after hearing of the apparitions, which reportedly took place daily up to the present time, and having occurred since June of 1981, Wayne Weible decided to write an article about them for his 4 weekly newspapers. And it was while viewing a videotape of the apparitions as research for that article that Wayne, who was at the time a Protestant by faith, says, "I suddenly felt a strong message within my heart that not only was I to write about these events, but I was to devote my life to the spreading of its basic message of reconciliation with God. And also," he says, "as a Lutheran, I knew very little about the Virgin Mary and apparitions." Now, Wayne Weible changed his original plans to write 1 article about the apparitions. Instead, he wrote a series of articles, after which, he says, spending a great deal of time on my knees in prayer, something I'd never really done before, and then several months later he sold his 4 weekly newspapers so that he could devote the majority of his time to spreading the Medjugorje message. From the initial printing of 3,000 copies in September of '86, Miracle at Medjugorje now has reached an astounding 50 million copies, and they're distributed throughout the world, and they've been translated into many foreign languages. For the past 8 years, Wayne Weible has traveled throughout the United States and around the world, lecturing on the events of Medjugorje. He's also appeared on many national and regional television and radio programs. Wayne and his wife Teresa converted to the Roman Catholic Church in December of 1991. However, he continues to emphasize that this message coming from the Virgin Mary in Medjugorje is for all faiths, not just for Catholics, or for that matter, just for Christians. God is reaching out to all people, for we are all his children. Ladies and gentlemen, a true apostle of Medjugorje and a most welcome visitor to New Zealand, Wayne Weible.
Thank you so very much. We feel very welcome, and I think I can speak for all of us who are here from the United States. The peace and the grace and the love of Jesus be with each and every one of you. My dear friends, this is my 2nd visit to New Zealand. I don't know quite exactly the dates, but I think it was sometime in November of 1991. And as it turns out, that was a very special time. I did something in that month, having been given this message by Our Lady, having seen the fruition of that message over those past years of taking the Medjugorje message, which is the renewal of the gospel of Jesus Christ, of taking that message all over the world. I came to Australia at the very first of the month of November in 1991, covering the west coast, the southern, the northern, and the eastern coasts, and finishing off by coming here to New Zealand. It was one of the greatest missions of this mission, because it was 30 days. And it was 30 days of being immersed in this message of love. That was the spiritual side. The human side, I was away from my wife and my children for 30 days. And I've never been so homesick. I arrived home filled with the joy because I was home. Filled with the joy because it had been such a tremendous trip. Thousands of people in Australia and New Zealand, in the Fiji Islands, had found this wonderful conversion of Medjugorje. Thousands had come out of curiosity to listen to this Lutheran Protestant speaking about the Blessed Virgin Mary. That is a bit unique. That was the spiritual side. The human side was that my heart was aching, because for 5 years I had waited to come into this Roman Catholic Church. And for 5 years my prayer almost daily was, Blessed Mother, when will I truly be your full son as a Roman Catholic? I had resolved myself to the fact that regardless of the mission that had been given to me, the possibility existed that I might never become a Roman Catholic. And it was almost too much to bear, except for conversion. Except for conversion through Mary. Because Mary's a human mother. We forget that. She's a human mother. I call her the servant mother because she's there constantly taking care of the spiritual children, and she was taking care of this one. And she was busy sending me around the world to bring this renewal of the gospel message of Jesus Christ to the world. And almost everywhere, I would be in a Catholic church and we would have Holy Mass. And the mass of people would go forward to receive Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist, and I would sit there in the pew or in the seat with a heart that absolutely was splitting, aching with a desire to receive Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. And I had resolved that situation by finally giving in to God and saying, Lord, if you never allow me to become a Catholic in name, then I accept that. Your will be done, not mine. A fruit of conversion through Mary. To accept whatever God has to offer to us. Could you live without the Eucharist? Think of that. Could you live without the knowledge, without the participation that you truly have Jesus living within you as well as with you? And that is what I faced. And the thought of never receiving was incomprehensible. And yet, through this conversion process, through Mary's love, through Mary's motherhood of love, through this intolerance, through this impatience, through this humanity, I finally said those words, Lord, your will, not mine. It didn't make it any easier, but at least I had peace. So I returned home from New Zealand, very tired. And the first thing my wife says to me is, we're going out to dinner on Friday night. I give you one night to rest, but then we're going out. I have a surprise for you. And I says, I'm not going anywhere for a week. I'm going to bed. Oh no, you have to come. This is very, very special. So we went out. And we ordered a drink, and I says, all right, what is this wonderful surprise that you have for me? Oh no, not until after the meal, coffee and dessert. So I waited. And finally, okay, what's the surprise? And with this beautiful smile that only a wife who truly loves her husband could give, she opens her purse and she opens this letter, and it's from the Diocese of Charleston, South Carolina. And the contents of that letter simply states, you have been cleared. You are accepted into this church as soon as you make the arrangements to come in. I read that, and I sat there, and I didn't react. And maybe one little tear. And Terry looked at me and she says, I don't understand. You've waited 5 years. And here it is. And I said, yes. But it's almost anticlimactic. Here it was the 1st of December and Christmas is coming, so I said to her, there's no hurry. We'll wait till January or February. Now, if you think that sounds like, oh, wow, what a great conversion, what patience, what peace. I need to go back just a few months and tell you the dream that lingered in my mind every time I would travel anywhere and sit in an audience, sit there in the Holy Mass, and watch Catholics receive Jesus. I had this vision. Yes, Mother, I know how much you love me. I know how hard you work me. And I know that God's will be done. And I know that one day I will come into this church. And that's going to be a glorious day. I'll go to Medjugorje. And there will be thousands of people from continents all over the world. And Maria and Ivan, the two visionaries, will be my sponsors. And Father Jozo and Father Svetozar Kraljevic and Father Slavko Barbrich, they will be there for the confirmation and the rite of initiation. It will be a glorious affair. And then the war came. And so I said to my wife, we'll wait. I think Our Lady wants us to come into the church quietly with her humility. That's hard for me. That's awfully hard for me. But we'll do it. And my wife said, I don't believe what I'm hearing. She says, but just to make sure, this coming Tuesday, we will go to the church and we will pray about it. Now that was a revelation. Because when I first came back from Medjugorje, my wife Teresa would not pray the rosary with me. She would pray it if my children were there, or if other couples were there, but she would not pray it with just the two of us. Until she came back from about her 5th trip to Medjugorje, and then she could pray the rosary with me. Here she is now saying to me, we'll go to the church and we'll pray about it. And I says, fine. We'll do that. I had one more talk to give for that year. A conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. And it was to be held on the weekend of December the 8th. the feast of Our Lady. And I was all set to go to that conference and then to relax and just be home until sometime in January when it would start all over again. So we'll work it in somewhere in late January or February. Well, on Tuesday, after a small prayer group that we were part of there in our church, a St. Therese, a Little Flower prayer group. Who else? She's Mary's first lieutenant, you see. She's always involved. So it was after this prayer group, named after her, that my wife and I knelt in the back of the church and prayed. And I said in my prayer, Blessed Mother, thank you. I know this is the way you want it, quiet, in humility, no big fanfare at Medjugorje. Okay, I understand. And suddenly I was interrupted as she spoke to my heart, just as she spoke to my heart the very first time. No, my son, you are to come in this weekend at the conference, for it is not just for you, but for the people. And I jerked back in my seat and I said out loud, no. Not saying no, I wouldn't do it, but just add a shock on how real the message was, how strong that message was. And that line, it is not for you, it is for the people. And my wife looked over at me and she says, did you get an answer? And I said, oh yes, I got an answer. So I told her what had happened. And hardly finishing the word, she began to vigorously shake her head. No, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. I can't go in front of all those people. My wife is very shy, very quiet. And I says, well, maybe you can't, but I know I have to because that's what she's asking of me. And after a few moments, just a few moments, she began to say, yes, you do. You really do. And then she started thinking, well, listen, if you're going to be able to do that, and see, I don't even know because I haven't told these people at the conference. I just got the message. I don't even know if it can happen, but Our Lady is saying it, then I know it's going to happen. She says, maybe I can arrange with our priest here for me to come in the same day here in Myrtle Beach. I'll ask him if he can do it at the 7:30 a.m. Mass because no one will be there. I says, that's fine. In the meantime, I rushed home and I called the lady who was in charge of the conference in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I told her what had happened. And I said to her, Mimi, I don't mean to try to be anything special, but do you think? And she started crying. And she said, Wayne, I wrote you a letter 3 months ago. And in that letter, I asked if it were possible that you might consider, if everything had been resolved, if you might consider coming into the church during our conference. And she says, then I tore it up because it was too presumptuous on my part. So there was confirmation. And within a matter of hours, it was arranged that my wife and I would come into that conference, into the church during that conference, and that retired Archbishop Philip Hannon would do the rite, would do the confirmation. And Father Kenneth Roberts, whom many of you probably are very much familiar with, would do the rite of initiation. I went home filled with joy, filled with the awe that comes knowing the intercession of Mary, having seen it in thousands and thousands of cases in the last 7 or 8 years, and yet knowing here once again, she was the one responsible. And knowing that all messages that come from Mary come from the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I was in awe. And I was sitting at home just staring at the walls sort of numb with joy when Terry comes in and she's even number looking than I am. She had gone to see our priest. And I says, "What's the matter?" She says, "I have to go to New Orleans. Father said that I should be there with you. I'll do it." I laughed and I hugged her and I says, "No, you don't have to. I've already called the airlines just to check. There are no seats." She says, "You call them back. The Holy Spirit wants us there. There will be seats." So we called back, and there not only was a seat for her, but for our 2 children as well. You see how God works. You see how the conversion through the mother works. Once we give God our hearts, once we give Him our souls, once we open ourselves, even though the humanity is there to interfere, Mary accomplishes. We went to New Orleans. We didn't tell anyone there other than the people there and the ones involved what was going to take place. We did not want to disturb the rest of the conference. It wasn't even announced until the final message before the last Mass on Sunday. And there were 6,000 people gathered there. And I'll not forget, praying with all my heart, filled with such joy. And I looked at this beautiful picture of Jesus there, hanging there behind the stage and the altar. And I says, "Jesus, I think I'm going to die of joy." And very clearly in my heart, "No, you have much work to do." Terry and I went forward and we received Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist for the first time in 5 years. And I didn't die. And Terry was wonderful. She got through it with no problems. My brothers and sisters, that was a matter of a few weeks after leaving here in 1991. And so I come to you here today, and for the first time now I can say, I come to you as a brother in the Roman Catholic Church. I could stop right now, because there are no sufficient words to tell anyone about Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. There are no greater stories to talk about than the reception of Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, to talk about the true conversion through Mary. But I have to for those who are still not hearing or seeing or feeling this love, this presence of Jesus every Holy Mass. Because every Mass for myself, since that day on December the 8th, 1991, every Holy Mass has been exactly the same. No less, no greater. And my dear friends, I have had Mass with the Holy Father. I have received the Eucharist from the hands of the vicar of this church. And I did not dare even look at him. I looked only at that host, because this was simply another priest with this great miracle. priest, gives us a miracle that rises far above Medjugorje, far above Fatima, far above Lourdes, far above any of the miracles that we have. And it's the most overlooked. Our brothers and sisters in this faith do not know that Jesus Christ exists in flesh and blood in the Holy Eucharist. And there are over 1 billion Catholics in this world. There is another 500 million Christians in this world, and they do not know that Jesus exists in the Holy Eucharist. And think about the 3.5 billion people in the world who do not know Jesus, who do not know His mother, who do not know the great gifts that God has given to us in this miracle of the absolute first magnitude. No wonder then in these last nearly 15 years, God the Almighty has chosen to send Mary, the mother of His living Son, to bring conversion to the world. Not just to Catholics, not just to lukewarm Lutherans, but to everyone. Mary embraced Judas. Mary prayed for Judas to the last moment of his life. The first thing after the resurrection that Mary wanted to do was to run to Judas to say, "Look at the miracle of Christ risen," and to bring him salvation. She does not discriminate. Conversion through Mary is what is taking place at Medjugorje in the world right now. It is a conversion of the heart. It is a conversion of the heart to the love of Jesus Christ. It is a love that makes us realize that He lives within us and with us in this Holy Eucharist. It is a love that makes us want to go forward to feed the hungry, to visit the sick, to go into the jails, to do the things that our humanity says, no, you can't do that. Because of this spiritual mother that we have, Mary. I remember back in the very beginning, after receiving that message, there in my living room looking for a story of all the absurdities now. And yet this is what God uses. Sitting there with a pad and with a pencil, watching a videotape to take notes so that I could write one story about Medjugorje, and there in the middle, knowing that this was more than a story, and suddenly hearing in my heart those words, those gentle words, "You are my son. I am asking you, do my son's will." You see, this is the message. This is what she gave to this son. This is what she gives to every son and every daughter gathered here, to every conference taking place in the world right now, to everyone attending Holy Mass, to everyone attending church. Even those churches who do not know. The Holy Spirit is there because the mother has come, and the mother will continue to come until every living soul understands the gift that God gave her at the foot of the cross. "Woman, behold thy children." Mary wasn't just a charge of St. John. Jesus wasn't just taking care of a domestic chore. "Gosh, John, I'm going to be gone. Take care of my mom, would you?" Nothing is wasted with God. Nothing. I remember in those early days with this message ringing in my head constantly, not knowing Mary, not knowing how to pray, not knowing Jesus Christ. How am I going to do this? I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a Christian. Realization for the first time in my life, I was nothing. I was part of the commercial, materialistic world. I was part of the business world. I was part of the tragedy of today's century. I was part of divorce. I was part of estrangement with family. I was part of all of the wrong things. And yet she comes to me. Why, Mary? Why? How many times did I ask that? How many times have all of us asked that question? Why, Mary? Why have you given this to me? Don't you know who I am? Don't you know what I've done in my life? Yes, she does. And she comes in to embrace us as she would embrace a Judas, or as she would embrace a John. She loved Judas as much as she loved John. I learned to pray. Right after that, I learned to pray. The first gift given to me was a rosary. Now, it's bad enough that I'm a journalist, and that I'm a lukewarm Lutheran. This nun puts a rosary in my hands, and I says, "Thank you very much. It's a lovely necklace. I'll give it to my wife." And she laughs and she says, "No, you don't understand. That's a prayer." I says, "That's a prayer." Oh, my dear friends, today I know that is a prayer. That is the prayer. That is Holy Scripture. That is the unity that will take place in the church. This is what every living Christian, every lover of God will be keeping in his and her possession very soon. I found out the life of Jesus Christ, the death of Jesus Christ, and the glory of Jesus. Why did she give me this right off? Because she knew it's the most powerful weapon in the world. It is the weapon that will unite. It is the weapon that will bind Satan and all of his demons. It is the weapon that leads us out of the burning house. As the mother is there saying, "This way, this way." It is the weapon that she has given in almost all modern day apparitions. Pray this prayer. With it, you can stop wars, and you can alter the laws of nature. Think of that. Do you doubt that after hearing Rita Klaus? You can alter the laws of nature. You can take limbs that no longer work and you can make them whole. You can stop wars. You can stop wars between nations. You can stop abortion. You can stop drugs. You can stop the apostasy in the church. You can stop the wars within each one of us. The struggle between good and bad, constantly raging, with a simple string of beads when they come from the heart. She gave me this weapon, and I began to go to the Catholic Church there on a regular basis in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And they looked at me somewhat oddly in the beginning. What is this Lutheran doing here in our church? What is he doing here? Every day, I couldn't get enough Jesus Christ. I remember there was a elderly lady, and she came up to me, and she said, "You know, we know of your involvement in Medjugorje, what you've done for Our Lady. And so we're going to do something now for you. We're going to pray the rosary every day for the next 2 months." I was overwhelmed and overjoyed. So I went every morning as they prayed that rosary, every morning that I was still there in town. And for 2 months they prayed the rosary. And on the last day, we finished the rosary. We used to be in the little cry room, the little side room of the church there, because that's all that came. And this woman stood up and she said, "Well, we've done this now for 2 months for Wayne's mission, for what he's doing. We appreciate all of you participating. This is the last time we'll do this." I stood up and I said, "B, please don't stop. Let us pray it every day. Let us continue to pray it every day. The look on her face was, oh no. Just like us, just like when we come home to our families, right? How many came home from Medjugorje and the family's going, oh boy, oh no. Here we have a religious fanatic taking place. This was her reaction. And then she sort of gulped and she said, okay, if we can get people to lead it. Oh, I'll lead it, I don't care. If no one else is here, I'll lead it. My dear friends, today we are no longer in that cry room. We couldn't go in the cry room. There's too many people. That's in that church every day at 8:30 before the 9 o'clock Mass. It is in that church. It has survived the opposition of several priests who have been at that church. As hard as that is to say. And it has spread to where it is prayed on also on Sunday morning before the 9 o'clock service. And that church has flourished in holiness. And this woman is still there. And in a very weak voice, just the other morning, just before coming here, going to Holy Mass on a Tuesday morning, she's praying the rosary. And I thought of those first 2 months. This is what Mary does, you see. She takes the little tiny pieces that are each one of us, and she begins to mold them into this beautiful mosaic, spiritual mosaic. So that the work, the conversion, all of the gifts that are given to all of us are put together to bring this grace to the world. Have you ever seen grace? No, we can't see it. We can't see electricity either, can we? But Our Lady has told us so many times at Medjugorje, I need your prayers. I need you to pray for peace. I need you to pray to end abortion. I need you. I can do nothing without you, my dear children. Isn't that amazing? She needs us. Oh, Mary, how we need you. How my heart aches at all of the billions of people in this world who do not know the Blessed Mother. How my heart rejoices when I see non-Catholics who are praying the rosary and who are involved in Medjugorje, because Our Lady has reached across the wall to touch them. And how many Catholics do I hear say, well, if they're so touched by Mary, why don't they become Catholics? Maybe for the same reason that I was unable to become Catholic for 5 years. Maybe because that is where Our Lady has called them to stay, to bring evangelization of this message to the people in their churches. There are now 10,000 plus Protestants involved in Medjugorje. Tens of thousands. They are praying the rosary. They are helping, they are aiding the war victims in this torn country. And they're coming to daily Mass just as I did. And they're suffering in the pews as they watch good Catholics go forward with such a nonchalance to receive Jesus Christ. And their hearts are aching because they know, as I knew, that this is Jesus present. And so many don't even acknowledge it. A few months after receiving that message, I went into that church in Myrtle Beach. And there's a beautiful statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the back. And I went over to that statue and I just knelt in front of it just to pray for a few moments. And we had this rather elderly nun that was assigned to the parish. We had 3 nuns. And she was very upset because of her age. They were wanting her to retire, and she wouldn't retire. She didn't want to. So then they were trying to transfer her out. So I'm there, kneeling, and I feel this little tap on my shoulders. And I turn around, and there she is, and she's smiling. And she says to me, "Do you know, every time I see you, it reminds me of Mary. You're her boy." Wow. What a compliment. I was so emotional, I got up and I went to the front of the church where the statue of Our Lady is. Now the tears are flowing, and I'm thinking, thank you, Blessed Mother. There she is again, tapping me on the shoulder. By the way, would you ask her to intercede for me and not to let them retire me or to transfer me, because I want to stay here. And I know that she'll listen to you. Here is this nun who has served for 50 plus years asking this Protestant to pray for her and to ask our mother a special favor. This is what conversion with Mary is all about. I wish everyone who is not aware of Mary could experience just one small touch as I have. I wish they could understand the role of the mother. I wish they could see that this is the woman who was there in that little room when Gabriel came, and she, very much afraid, was told, "Do not fear, Mary, for God has found favor with you. Hail, full of grace." This is the title that God gave to her at that moment. Full of grace. This human mother. God is with you. Not God be with you. Not a greeting. God is with you, Mary. How many of us are saying all the time, what do I tell my Protestant friends when they talk about Mary? And she's not in the Holy Scriptures that much. How can we prove to them what Mary's role is? There you are. You, full of grace. You, God is with you. You are to be the mother of the living Word in the world. You are the first tabernacle. You are the new Eve. You are there to correct the errors of the first Eve. And what is her answer? Let it be done unto me as you say. Would that you and I could answer that every time Our Lady calls us. Every time Jesus sends her to us. Let it be done, Lord, as you say. But we have this humanity. And we allow that humanity to get in the way. How many graces, how many miracles does it take to bring conversion? It should take one. It should take the total realization of Jesus present in the Holy Eucharist. But God gives us tens of thousands of miracles throughout the ages. In these 10 years that I have been preaching this message of Medjugorje, there have been miracle, 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 miracle everywhere I go. I am steeped in the miracles of Medjugorje. I am steeped in the miracle of God's grace in this world. And yet, at times when Mother has come to me and said, I need you, do this, I've said, no, I can't do it. Can you imagine? It happened in Medjugorje, of all places. The one that hurts the most, I think. It happened because I went to Medjugorje and there were a lot of people there, and I went with a group of people, and it was all I could do to take care of them. They wanted question answered. And I went there and I just wanted to get away. I wanted to just be a pilgrim, which is impossible. because I said yes to the mission that God asked of me through Mary. I said, yes, I'll do it, Lord. I didn't say yes the way Mary said yes. First thing I said was maybe. And then I kept saying, I can't do this, I can't do that. And Mary was there constantly to assist and to guide and to nudge and to urge along the way. So here we are, many years into it. The books are now out. The articles are out. The tapes are out. People know who I am. They know my role in Medjugorje. And I go to Medjugorje and they're everywhere. And they're wanting. And I'm saying, just let me go hide somewhere and be quiet. And finally, I found a place in the very back of the church there at this evening Croatian Mass where they've got the chairs set up now and the benches. I went in the very back place where there was no one. And I noticed as I went back there that there was a family, a very small gathering sitting there in the front. 2 women and 2 young men. And one of the young men was bent over and he was coughing terribly. And I knew that he was ill. And I sat down, and I could hear Mary speaking to me. You need to go and pray over him. And I said, I'll pray for him here. I can do it from here. I'm changing, you see, what she wants. Go. And put your hands on him and pray over him. Take these hands. Take these hands that have committed so many sins that God has now cleansed. With his mercy, with his forgiveness, take this hand, place it on that young man and pray over him. I'll do it from here. So I closed my eyes, being true to what I said I would do. I closed my eyes and I began to pray. There was a tap. I turned around and looked. It was one of the young women from up front. And she says, excuse me, are you Wayne Weible? I said, yes. I wonder if I might ask a favor of you. Do you see those people in the front? Yes, I see them. That's my brother and that's my mother. And my brother is very ill. I wondered if you could come and pray over him. Oh, Mother, I felt that big. And then the young woman began to cry and she said, my brother is dying of AIDS. I was so shaken. I said to her, look, can you meet me here tomorrow? I'll come and I'll do it tomorrow. I was so shaken. There was no way. There was nothing in me. I felt so Judas-like. So she agreed. And I thought of that young man the whole next day until that evening, and I went back there waiting for them, and finally they came. And they sat down and we began to talk. And I found out that this young man was gay. And the other young man with him was his lover. One was Catholic and one was Protestant. And this young Catholic was the one that was ill and dying. And his mother and his sister had brought him to Medjugorje, hoping for healing. You see, the grace of God had settled there in such a powerful way that other AIDS victims had been healed. And so I began to talk to this young man and to the young friend of his who was Protestant and who knew nothing about Mary and who knew nothing about Medjugorje. He was only there out of concern because he truly loved this man and the other one loved him. Sometimes we overlook that. And then finally, after talking about what it was about and God's love and their need to ask for forgiveness, do we have the courage to do that? Do we have the courage to tell someone, I love you and I'm going to pray for you, but what you've done is wrong? Yeah, we're going to be vilified. We're going to get letters, I do. How dare you? How dare you judge? I'm not judging. I love you and I'm praying for you and I'm wanting you to be well. I'm wanting you to be whole. Well, this young Catholic man opened his heart and he accepted it. And I prayed over him and the other one as well. And then I hugged them as hard as I've ever hugged them. And with tears I said, Blessed Mother, I pray for a healing for these men. And in my heart, I knew that this young man would die. But I knew that his soul would be healed. I left that particular pilgrimage to Medjugorje very shaken by that incident. Again, it was toward the end of the year, and in January of the next year, I was on the airplane. I had a handful of mail. I'm always behind. And I was answering the letters on my laptop on the airplane, and I came across this one, and it was the mother of this young man. Dear Wayne, my son whom you prayed over in Medjugorje, the one with AIDS, died 2 months ago. He died in peace. He died in the grace of this church. He came back to this church. And then I looked at the address. And they were from a very small town called Little River, South Carolina, approximately 12 miles from my home. We went to Medjugorje to bring healing to her son, and she lived 12 miles away. Conversion through Mary is every day. Conversion through Mary is this all-consuming love of the Holy Eucharist, so that you know that you can do the things that Jesus did. Conversion through Mary is being able to reach out through hatred, through prejudice, through fatigue, through humanity, through the no's that we give to our God, and finally to do His will. Conversion through the mother is this intimacy that makes her your mother, that makes her present, makes her the human mother that she is, so that she touches us every day in some way. This is why every day I am steeped in Medjugorje, not because of public exposure, not because of writing books, but because of the little miracles, because of the medium miracles, because of the huge miracles, because of the presence of Mary in the tiniest of things and the largest of things in our lives. This is the conversion of the mother. And this is the mother that will bring all children of God into one family. And soon. And there's the humanity saying, well, how soon is your soon? In God's time, soon. Before the end of this millennium. As Mary has said through another one of her very human sons, Father Stefano Gobi. Oh, the stories I could tell you about this priest. And the number of times that he has said no. But she said through him, through these wonderful locutions, through the Marian movement of priests that has taken place for almost 20 years now, before the celebration, the Jubilee of the new millennium, you will see the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. Think of that. You will see the fulfillment of Fatima, of all of the things given at Medjugorje, of all the things given by this mother since La Salette, 1846. And here again her words at Medjugorje in the very early days, when I have appeared to the last visionary at Medjugorje with the last secret, and when these things occur, I will no longer appear on the earth in apparition, because it will no longer be necessary. Hallelujah. I have to close. And I want to say, there is so much for us to do as her children. There is so much conversion through Mary that is still waiting to be done. There is still Medjugorje. There are still pilgrimages going. There are still people going who will find this conversion through Mary for the first time 15 years after she first came. Let us pray. Let us truly fast. Let us do all that we can to eliminate the obstacles of our humanity, that we may truly be Mary's boys and Mary's girls. Amen. God has to offer to us. Could you live without the Eucharist? Think of that. Could you live without the knowledge, without the participation that you truly have Jesus living within you as well as with you? And that is what I faced. And the thought of never receiving was incomprehensible. And yet, through this conversion process, through Mary's love, through Mary's motherhood of love, through this intolerance, through this impatience, through this humanity, I finally said those words, Lord, your will, not mine. It didn't make it any easier, but at least I had peace. So I returned home from New Zealand, very tired. And the first thing my wife says to me is, we're going out to dinner on Friday night. I give you one night to rest, but then we're going out. I have a surprise for you. And I says, I'm not going anywhere for a week. I'm going to bed. Oh no, you have to come. This is very, very special. So we went out. And we ordered a drink, and I says, all right, what is this wonderful surprise that you have for me? Oh no, not until after the meal, coffee and dessert. So I waited. And finally, okay, what's the surprise? And with this beautiful smile that only a wife of the gospel of Jesus Christ, of taking that message all over the world, I came to Australia at the very first of the month of November in 1991, covering the west coast, the southern, the northern, and the eastern coasts, and finishing off by coming here to New Zealand. It was one of the greatest missions of this mission, because it was 30 days. And it was 30 days of being immersed in this message of love. That was the spiritual side. The human side, I was away from my wife and my children for 30 days. And I've never been so homesick. I arrived home filled with the joy because I was home. Filled with the joy because it had been such a tremendous trip. Thousands of people in Australia and New Zealand, in the Fiji Islands, had found this wonderful conversion of Medjugorje. Thousands had come out of curiosity to listen to this Lutheran Protestant speaking about the Blessed Virgin Mary. That is a bit unique. That was the spiritual side. The human side was that my heart was aching, because for 5 years I had waited to come into this Roman Catholic Church. And for 5 years my prayer almost daily was, Blessed Mother, when will I truly...
Our next speaker, please. Our speaker is Wayne Weible, a former newspaper publisher and columnist who became interested in the alleged apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary to 6 young Croatians in the tiny farming village of Medjugorje in Bosnia-Herzegovina. He's written 3 international bestseller books on his experiences and his investigations of the reported apparitions. Wayne Weible's first book was called Medjugorje, The Message, published in 1989. The second was titled Letters from Medjugorje, published in 1991, and the latest publication, Medjugorje, The Mission, with an official release date of April 1995. In October of 1985, after hearing of the apparitions, which reportedly took place daily up to the present time, and having occurred since June of 1981, Wayne Weible decided to write an article about them for his 4 weekly newspapers. And it was while viewing a videotape of the apparitions as research for that article that Wayne, who was at the time a Protestant by faith, says, I suddenly felt a strong message within my heart that not only was I to write about these events, but I was to devote my life to the spreading of its basic message of reconciliation with God. And also, he says, as a Lutheran, I knew very little about the Virgin Mary and apparitions. Now, Wayne Weible changed his original plans to write 1 article about the apparitions. Instead, he wrote a series of articles, after which, he says, spending a great deal of time on my knees in prayer, something I'd never really done before. And then several months later, he sold his 4 weekly newspapers so that he could devote the majority of his time to spreading the Medjugorje message. From the initial printing of 3,000 copies,
be your full son as a Roman Catholic. I had resolved myself to the fact that regardless of the mission that had been given to me, the possibility existed that I might never become a Roman Catholic. And it was almost too much to bear, except for conversion. Except for conversion through Mary. Because Mary's a human mother. We forget that. She's a human mother. I call her the servant mother because she's there constantly taking care of the spiritual children, and she was taking care of this one. And she was busy sending me around the world to bring this renewal of the gospel message of Jesus Christ to the world. And almost everywhere, I would be in a Catholic church and we would have Holy Mass. And the mass of people would go forward to receive Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist, and I would sit there in the pew or in the seat with a heart that absolutely was splitting, aching with a desire to receive Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. And I had resolved that situation by finally giving in to God and saying, Lord, if you never allow me to become a Catholic in name, then I accept that. Your will be done, not mine. A fruit of conversion through Mary. To accept whatever.
In September of '86, Miracle at Medjugorje now has reached an astounding 50 million copies, and they're distributed throughout the world, and they've been translated into many foreign languages. For the past 8 years, Wayne Weible has traveled throughout the United States and around the world lecturing on the events of Medjugorje. He's also appeared on many national and regional television and radio programs. Wayne and his wife Teresa converted to the Roman Catholic Church in December of 1991. However, he continues to emphasize that this message coming from the Virgin Mary in Medjugorje is for all faiths, not just for Catholics, or for that matter just for Christians. God is reaching out to all people, for we are all his children. Ladies and gentlemen, a true apostle of Medjugorje and a most welcome visitor to New Zealand, Wayne Weible.
Thank you so very much. We feel very welcome, and I think I can speak for all of us who are here from the United States. The peace and the grace and the love of Jesus be with each and every one of you. My dear friends, this is my second visit to New Zealand. I don't know quite exactly the dates, but I think it was sometime in November of 1991. And as it turns out, that was a very special time. I did something in that month, having been given this message by Our Lady, having seen the fruition of that message over those past years of taking the Medjugorje message, which is the renewal